Welcome back, Doug Pagitt Radio on AM 950. You know, this has been a big week. It's hard to believe that it was just a week ago, late on that Sunday night, that we heard the news about Osama bin Laden being, at the time, captured and then later heard killed. And it spread like wildfire around the social media world. I got a text message that came. It was people were tweeting and Facebooking this big story. And there's a lot to that, right? There's a lot about this. So I wanted to give a little of my thoughts on this whole, what should we think about this Osama bin Laden being killed by the United States military? Mm-hmm. Religious people have a particular question to answer when they're thinking about these issues, because in nearly every religion, the protection of the guilty is an assumption. You're going to protect even the guilty.
Yeah.
You're going to forgive. On a personal and corporate level, there is a consideration of how do you forgive those who've wronged you. In the Christian tradition, it's Jesus who says, if you only love those who love you, what good is that?
Yeah.
You have to love your enemy and bless those who persecute you. So in the Christian tradition, there's a real dilemma about how one is supposed to think about these issues related to a warrior who has vowed to bring destruction to the country that we live in. Mm-hmm. Now, this is true all over the world, right? Because there are people for whom they carry grudges and they carry plans to bring bad things to many countries around the world. So how are we supposed to think about that? So when this all went down last Sunday night, I was sitting with a group of people when the news was spreading about 10 o'clock, and people came over and said, I don't know how to think about this. How should I think about this? Yeah. Should I be glad? Should I be cheering? That got me thinking. One of the reasons we don't know how to think about this is because we literally don't know how to think about it because we've never had to think about it before. So we don't have a category in which you engage the appropriate response.
Yeah.
We don't know, right? It's not like people are sitting around saying, oh, I think when maybe a major figure who's been recruiting people to think harmful thoughts and behave in harmful ways against the United States is finally killed, how should I respond? We don't have a history, personally or even collectively, of how you respond to it. So you have to make it up on the spot.
Yeah.
And this is what I think is confusing for people. They don't know which emotions they're supposed to borrow to apply to this circumstance. Mm-hmm. Right? They don't know, oh, is this the one of we won? Is this the one of someone died? Mm-hmm. I'm, of course, no Osama bin Laden fan, but the guy was shot and killed in front of his daughter. Like, just at a base sort of empathetic level, one says to themselves, oh, that's incredibly sad, right? Not only that her father turns out to be someone who I would consider to be a psychopath. Mm-hmm. She's raised in that environment, but then he's shot and killed in front of her, and her family's taken. Like, it's a hard. So we don't have a ready supply of what emotions we're supposed to apply to this. And what I find funny about us in the United States is people expect that you're supposed to have an instantaneous response.
Yeah.
Like, we think, well, what do I think about this right now? And we'll give ourselves 25 minutes to sort of put together an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that this raises the issue of, what if you don't have a way to feel about this? What if you don't feel particularly anything? What if what you feel you're not proud of?
Yeah.
Maybe it's supposed to take a little time.
Yeah.
So that's what started ruminating for me over the last week is, why do people want to have a response and want to have it so quickly and then judge other people's responses compared to their own? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of talk about, oh, was it appropriate for people at Ground Zero or at the White House or at baseball games to be chanting you?
Yeah.
Well, on what basis do you compare that to being appropriate? How would you know?
Right.
Right. So we were in a conversation on Thursday night with our rabbi around here, and a group of us for this Torah reading, and the section happened to be the love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Wow.
Out of the Torah. So it was sort of fresh and fitting.
Yeah.
And we're asking, well, where does that apply? What do you do when every experience you've had as a devout religious person, let's say, has never included this circumstance? Do you just say, oh, I'm going to feel the way I would about any particular tragedy that would befall someone? Or do you say, no, I'm going to be joyous about this? We don't easily access the way that we should respond to these issues.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you at first, I mean, do you think that they set out to intentionally kill him? But that's really not the point.
No, it does become a point pretty quick, though.
Well, yeah, that is one of the things that complicated deciding how I was going to feel about it. Was I expected that if we were going to go after somebody, we would try to capture them and bring them in for trial. I think that would have been a better example in the international community. But from the news reports that I've seen, it sounds like they just went in clearly with the intention of shooting him. And he wasn't armed, and I know that he was a very bad guy. I'm not a big Bin Laden fan either, but,
it does raise an issue. All of a sudden now you have two issues at play.
Right.
In our opinion, as citizens of our country, did the United States behave in a way that we would have considered to be righteous or not?
Right.
Now becomes another question you have to ask at the same time.
Yeah.
And see, I am torn about if killing someone is really worse than locking someone up for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how I feel about that. Personally, there's a lot worse things you could do to me than kill me. You could take my children.
Yeah.
You could lock me in a cell, solitary confinement for the next 50 years of my life.
Make you eat curry.
That would feed me a steady diet of curry. Rice-based curry.
Yeah.
And there are things that would be far worse than just killing someone.
Yeah.
So, but in our nation, we have this thing about, well, killing someone is for sure the worst thing in the world. I'm not sure that's always the worst thing in the world.
But I could totally understand how, like, with the complications with, Guantanamo Bay, that the idea is like, look, let's just take this guy out, dump him in the ocean, it's done.
Yeah.
There's no shrine to him. The bad guy is gone. He's not sitting in a jail challenging our, justice system or, in any way. It's over. I could kind of see, See,
and then that's what's interesting for a lot of us. What kicks in our thoughts about what do we think about the love your neighbor as you love yourself and bless your enemies who persecute you. Then it comes in, well, did we match our own standards of jurisprudence?
Right.
Like, that's interesting that some people go right there.
Yeah.
Where I kind of went in the initial thought, I remember the first two thoughts that came through my mind. One was, that's 4 more years for Obama.
Yeah.
It was instantaneous. And number two, when I heard the circumstance of the situation, was how very sad for that guy's kids.
Yeah. I guess, he was like such a personification of I mean, if he did indeed, plot, 9/11, the diabolical nature of that was so deep and evil that it's really, hard for me to think of him as a human with the family and wives and,
and kids and all that.
Kids and stuff like that. So
and it really causes me to have to ask the question, do you blame the children for the thoughts, behaviors, and ideas and attitudes of their parents?
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit more, I'm sure, in coming weeks on Doug Pagitt Radio. AM 950, the voice of Minnesota. And DougPagittRadio.com. We're going to be back with Carla Barnhill after the break.
I didn't think twice. My hand went for my horn.